Okay, so yeah, so it's very easy for the movement to play this up because you can play the mammalian brain, sympathy card, and you can say it's very cruel to little old ladies and to disabled people, and the movement should start a campaign that's basically, help these people out because the government isn't, and those kind of things. Are very useful to do at this kind of stage, because there are a number of goals. One of them, you establish mutuality and self-support. It's good for adaptation. But you want to reinforce the narrative that the government is betraying the people, that they have all false motives for lockdown. Lockdown is damaging. XR is doing something to counter it. Basically, and then it plays into the economics too. For example, imagine if you have, brigades. You say, well, we have these brigades to do Meals on Wheels for people that can't feed themselves in pandemic. You put up a load of YouTube videos of people that say they're starving to death in Britain because basically they're just the economics of lockdown and they can't afford Amazon and stuff. And very easy videos to get. You put a whole load of that and say, we're starting basically blockade defiers. We've locked down defiant squads to go and deliver meals to people. Then you get a whole lot of people arrested for delivering meals, and then you get the coup for saying all we're trying to do is help out little old ladies that the government left behind. And then you develop that narrative of basically that the government is not doing their job as your mommy and daddy.
There is a certain amount of that happening already, where there's been a lot in recent weeks with this second lockdown, where, like there was a gym owner and he was like, look, fuck this, I'm going to open my gym, and of course police came in and really heavy-handedly arrested him. There was quite a few gym owners, and the fines are eye-watering that they're dishing out to people. And then there was an old lady, like 76-year-old woman, protesting outside Parliament, and there was only a small group of people, and they just grabbed her, spread eagle, bundled her into the back of a police van. And there was a politician, I can't remember which guy, a backbench MP, and he saw it all happening, and he was on his way into the chamber. And he was in the chamber and started going mad because he is already quite libertarian in his views about this and disagree. He's a lockdown skeptic. But there are quite a lot of cases of, small business owners defiant. There was a woman running a stationery shop up north, and she said, no, I'm not playing ball with this. And there was another guy who was running a hairdresser, and he wouldn't open the door to the police. He said, look, I've got an affidavit. I'm acting on common law, did the whole rebellion that way, which was interesting to see. So I think there are the starting points of people, saying no, enough.
You want to make the government even more unpopular, and these actions do that. But you also want to, I was not going to say encourage lockdown, but I mean, maybe, I don't know. It's debatable. Did you follow what I mean? I mean,
yeah.
I don't like it. Nobody likes it, and I know it was a terrible.
But that's why it's good, because nobody likes it. You don't want people to be happy.
It sounds.
Well, the thing is, they've given us Christmas. So the whole thing with recently. So this week, I don't know if you have been following. Anyway, so they gave they said you can bubble at Christmas. Okay, but the scientists were like, a lot of them were like, oh no, this is bad news. This is just adding fuel to the fire in their analysis of where the pandemic is. So everybody has pretty much knows that it's a given that come January, it's going to be bam, into another third lockdown, even harder until the spring when the vaccine comes. So yeah, they kind of, carrot and stick thing here, but everyone is like so already sick to the back teeth of it that they're just looking forward to Christmas. But I don't know. I don't know how much more you could do at the moment to encourage.
So my thinking.
I see the logic.
My thinking more in terms of focusing on lockdown is focus on the consequences of lockdown. So how happens in terms of rent? Because rent abatement and stuff is I think the movement should be looking for people struggling to pay rent, and then that's the first start of launching rent strikes and things like that. Is basically what you want to do is have a snowball effect of people not paying rent and debt, and the system will change very quickly as soon as you get mass debt defaults. But it's a complete gift, because now, basically the people are getting into trouble, and renters. There's so many people in Britain that live off rent, so it's a very unhealthy relationship to have, renters and landlords. And the fact that they've spread the renter-landlord relationship since Maggie Thatcher was to bolster conservatism. But in a crisis, it turns against you, because people can't pay their rent, and a lot of people are living off rental income. So that relationship should be a target for the movement. That basically they should try and encourage renter default. And so, especially since everybody's online now,
that's really powerful. You're right, definitely. So sorry, I was just saying, that I agree completely. That is really powerful. That would really hit it where, because as you say, there's such a big renter income for so many people in this country, because they're homeowners.
So the thing is to start a token symbolic default, just to get things warmed up and get people started, to try and seed it. So you just say you make a penny default. So a symbolic default is everybody's doing a penny default, and then they send that penny to somewhere that's aids the movement, or something that you can think of that is a good use of that penny, that kind of in terms of the cost benefit to the government. But basically, I think if you had a standard letter and you make a formula out of it, and you say, this is how you do a penny default, and you withhold one or some token amount, a nickel or a dime, that's not worth collecting off your rent, and then you with your next rent check, you send a thing saying, the 5 cents has been 5 pence or whatever has been kept from my rent as a protest against the rental system and all that kind of thing, and blah blah blah, anything really, and then you send that money to somewhere else, and so you get basically it's a signal to the government of how many people would do that. Is really a foot in the door for how much trouble they could be in if you started escalating that penny. So basically, if you could get a broad movement of people that are protesting, just find out whatever the popular thing is that people want to protest is a good enough excuse, and then basically then you say, well, it's getting worse, and you ratchet it up. Once you start to get people in tune with the fact that, well, we go from a penny to 2 pennies. You can't collect 2 pennies. It's that nobody can collect that. Nobody can evict you for 2 pennies. But what it's saying is, it's like a vote. It's saying, like, we can go all the way to 100%. You just keep on carrying on the way you are, and let's see how that. And you start that ball rolling. So I think that's where XR should go next. Is try to get because they're pacifist and non-violent, and that's a good thing for a non-violent protest, is just a nickel and dime thing, and on all things, basically on terms of debts to banks as well. So basically say, this is a protest against the banks, and just say this is but Gail's absolutely correct. The reason why the environment is being destroyed, and the reason why we're in so much trouble, is because of rent on debt. It means that the system has to keep growing. It's the engine of growth is profit and debt. And so, you just spell it out. Say, we cannot, at the state of the world is in, afford to have unearned income and people, expecting profits, return on investment. And the days of investment and return are gone. And you're saying, we're saying we agree by putting like a 1 pence protest on our repayments.
Have you suggested this to? I suppose you're banned from XR. Have you suggested?
I have. Yeah, you see. Yeah, I've been in contact a little bit with them and stuff, but they don't understand money. They don't understand finance, and so Gail made huge strides, just understanding that the engine of growth is debt and interest on debt. And so, yeah, that's great. But I think what happens is they immediately start going into circles and try and get consensus. And it basically, you can't do it that way. They were much better with Roger and stuff, where they had a hierarchy, behind the scenes leadership.
Is he fully ostracized now from the organization?
Yeah, they kind of expelled him. Now he's on Burning Pink.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
But yeah, but still in the mind of the world, Gail and Roger are the leadership of the movement. So whoever expelled them, they should just ride right over them. I mean, if I was Gail and Roger, I would pretend that, fuck them. But they're too nice. They're just too nice, and they get consensus and everything. But I would just barrel forward, and if I was Roger, and just say, like, so they say, "Oh, we're expelling you from the movement because you don't think." It's like, fuck you. I founded this movement. Go and start your own. And then, just carry on. And basically all those people would have to shut up. But they listen too much to the consensus, and you won't get a committee because they don't understand finance. You're never going to get them to do a money rebellion that makes any sense because they don't even understand.
Yeah, that was my point about with her trying to explain it on the mainstream media, and it's like it just was a bit clumsy. I get what you're saying. I agree completely, and it's great that they've adopted that strategy. But it's just
I don't see that going anywhere. I don't see the rebellion going anywhere because they, it's too much to ask people to withhold and stuff, and call in and tell it. It's not going to go anywhere.
No, it's too like what you're saying. It makes more sense, but to just expect people to just suddenly default on their mortgages. I mean, yeah, maybe next year that'll work. I don't know.
Yeah, well, the target should be to establish the fact that whether you pay your mortgage or not is a cultural norm now. And you should break that cultural norm by establishing with a penny that whether we pay this isn't determined on a mortgage agreement or on a rental agreement. It's determined on how you perform as a debt parasite.
Yeah,
so it's like it's making a slight dent in the relationship, and it's saying that, well, you can't just collect rent and ruin the planet. There's a limit to this, and we're symbolically saying that we're going to start this new relationship where you have to basically change your behavior, but otherwise we don't fulfill our part of the bargain. So it works the same in inland revenue with tax and stuff, and you say, well, the government isn't protecting us, it isn't paying us, it isn't doing any decent services, and it's wrecking the planet and basically chewing up the future of our children. So you're saying, like, I'm saying that this is notice that we're going to use our financial muscle until you change your behavior. So let's start with a penny so that you're on notice, and we'll take it from there.
I didn't actually see the XR Money Rebellion video. Was it any good? Did they lay out why money is the root of the problem here?
Gail did, but it's not simple enough. There's too much baggage, and there's too much cruft and hair on all the stuff that XR does. There are too many issues, and people are just not serious enough. So, revolutions have their timing. And what revolutionaries normally do, revolutionary leaders they gear themselves up for the timing. So when everything is in deadlock and the revolution is not ripe, then you're in a preparation mode for where it is. What I see in the XR rebellion is they really always at the bleeding edge of where they are. So the leadership is at the exact point of the revolution, and there's no difference between the rebels and the leadership. And so, but what the leadership should be more decoupled from the hoi polloi, and there should be, even though you don't say hoi polloi and leadership, you pretend that it's a holacracy, but it's not really, obviously. And then, what they should be doing is preparing for when the people are more serious. So now if everybody can be vegan and do animal rebellion and do reparations rebellion, all it's saying is nobody's focused yet. But so at some point, people are going to be in panic and then say, that's your moment. Now, the leadership is not preparing for that moment of panic. they're all dithering. So the kind of preparation you do is establish these things like a penny debt rebellion. Because what that's for is it's very, very light on the movement. It's symbolic, but what you're establishing is the tools you will use when everybody gets serious. So when everybody suddenly, juices start flowing and they fucking will eat anything, no matter how many legs it has or whether it has leaves or not. When people are getting desperate and there's a crisis, then you've established the levers that you're going to start pulling for the rebellion. And so that's what they should be doing now. They need more clarity of vision on how they're going to conduct themselves when the shit hits the fan. So yeah, this is a valuable time of preparation that from where I'm sitting, I just see it completely being wasted. It just means that the leadership is not very seasoned and they're not very strong. So yeah, they're dithering, but it's traditional for the left to do that. It's kind of sad. So, but it's a terribly wasted opportunity. Because like global revolution isn't going to happen. We can't do that anymore. That dream has died. But we should be looking forward to deep adaptation, and not the kind of navel-gazing deep adaptation of Jim Bendel. I mean, real shit. Like how are we going to medicate people? What are we going to do with people that are disabled and old and frail? How are we going to school kids during a serious collapse? And so, basically, the way I see it, you could ease the pain a lot for what we're going into by just thinking ahead and doing disaster preparedness, essentially. And there's no downside as far as I can see, because if I'm completely alarmist and we never hit that disaster crisis, it doesn't matter. The very mode that you got in for disaster preparedness and crisis preparedness is probably a good way to live generally. So there's not a downside to it. You'd be far happier in most people, just for the mere fact that they were working together in solidarity, would have a much happier and better life with less suicide and less addiction if they were preparing for a crisis. So some of the best times I've had, I mean, here just doing hurricane preparedness for the Medicaid when it came in, and I was in Crete, and there were like 3 boats, all English, all happen to be English. And we all preparing for this hurricane bearing down. It was fucking marvelous. We had a week that was, and then the hurricane never hit. Basically, it was 40 knots of wind, and we were fine. But we got so close in that time, just complete strangers. Basically, I didn't stay friends with everybody, but I know some of the others did. They were friends for life after that week of experience. So it was such a nice time that I would say it would be wonderful for anybody to experience it. But that's how I think the leadership of XR should be thinking. They're thinking in terms of causing as much shit as possible on the one hand, and on the other hand, getting people prepared for as much shit as possible.
Yeah, it's difficult at the moment for those kind of grassroots things that are already there in communities, like, getting together, I don't know, small groups and stuff. That's all being, messed up because of this pandemic, and people are paranoid. And I mean, I saw some friends from my kayak club yesterday. I mean, they're all a lot older, they're all semi-retired. But, they're all like super paranoid. I mean, we were outdoors doing some work on the clubhouse, but, that you just kind of think that kind of grassroots stuff is not really going to happen until people have had enough and woken up, and I don't know, they lost their house or their job and stuff next year maybe. But the minute it's like everything's being restricted, it doesn't seem feasible. Like every single thing, even like going to church, like, not that I go to church, but do you know what I mean? Like people their lives are being turned upside down by the pandemic. So it kind of, Yeah, people are being isolated.
That's a very fertile ground because there's adversity, and
Yeah,
that
I
sort
will
of
agree.
situation.
Yeah, but it's like, how does that? Yeah,
Yeah, but it will if it lasts long enough.
yeah,
Human agency will kick in. You see, because people have been submitted to such a harrowing type of life that have made them so submissive and so helpless that they're still rolling on that. But give them enough time under these conditions, and you're going to see things emerging that you've never seen. Of course, you can also say it's terrible. I can't, but give it time. You see, it's only a year ago people were still flying over to Thailand and doing all the. It's now it's only starting to kick really now.
yeah.
And
It's really just.
things are going to last. Things are going to last deep into next year. Maybe next Christmas will still be with all this rolling out of vaccines and all these sort of aftermath of economic crisis. I think we're in for the long haul. You see.
But in general, a time like this, like you say, is fertile ground. It's time for preparation. So having conversations like this is useful in developing strategies like a penny rebellion and stuff. It's perfect in this time. It's time for reflection and preparation. So if you look in the I Ching or Sun Tzu and the Art of War, it's all about timing. But what you're supposed to do as a revolutionary now is you should be working your ass off in preparation for when the dam breaks. So if you look in the I Ching, it says, I think in this situation, it would be like deadlock or stasis. And it says basically you should withdraw and prepare. So basically it's like, now's the time you should be working feverishly, basically while everybody's sleeping, you should be sharpening weapons and arming and preparing how the battle's going to go. And that's what people are going
the art of deception.
What's that?
And perfecting the art of deception in Sun Tzu, very important. Important.
Yeah.
But all of those things, basically, this is the time for rumination. Basically, this is the time when, in general, revolutionaries get chucked in jail. They normally do kind of what Hitler did. Basically, they start out all full of piss and vinegar and break the law and stuff and get chucked in jail. Then in jail, they have a time to reflect and they think, okay, you can't just take a frontal assault on this beast. You got to be more crafty. And they start, basically, the incubation period is in jail. The state always makes this mistake. They take these hotheads, chuck them in jail, and give them an incubation period, which is exactly what they need for the next stage of the revolution.
Well, I encourage a lot of people around me to look at this lockdown as a jail sentence, as a training, as what we're talking about, because I think I've never felt so alive since the lockdown. I mean,
you mustn't say that.
I'm having a being a Cassandra, you were feeling isolated, and that it has kind of confirmed what you were saying. But it's not only that; it has brought out a lot of things that I wanted to see happening now, and I'm really looking at it as an extremely crucial period. And I hope I'm not saying it's. I hope it's going to last, but I think it needs to continue. To bear some fruit, you see.
Yeah, you see, I have to admit that I don't like to say what you just said, but since you've said it, I have to admit it too. Because I love lockdown, I absolutely adore it. And see, the thing is, that it's been such a relief for me. And the fact that basically now we can move on to the next stage. You see, the whole thing is I've been spending years saying, like, guys, the dam's going to break. And everybody thinks, what do you know? The dam's never going to break. What are you, a dam expert? And then, like, suddenly the dam is, like, got a big crack in it in the water. And you're saying, now everybody can see the dam is going to break. I feel like, oh, thank God, I can move on to the next stage now. It's like so much relief. But for me, it's rest and incubation for the next stage. So it's basically, it's a time for thought and discovery. And there's so much to do. It's just so damn much to do in terms of mental preparation. Just once you just start pulling on one of the threads, once you start saying, okay, we're hitting the wall, there's so many you pull on one of those threads, say, what should you do? And if you take some line like, we should be doing deep adaptation, and you say, well, what does that mean? And once you start looking, it's all involved, and suddenly this whole universe opens up, and you suddenly realize, fuck, we've got hardly any time. And then so time in lockdown becomes a gift. But what most people are doing is they haven't come to terms with the fact that things are changing, so that they need to go through a psychological period first of grief to wave goodbye the old world. And that straight away, people like Gail and stuff, and what you can do in lockdown in terms of videos, and anybody that can see it has a tremendous task, if they want to give it to themselves, of just preparing people psychologically for letting go. I mean, start saying things. I mean, I say outrageous things to people, like, I know people that are mad about science and completely academic. And, all the ideas are at 6 and 7s in terms of doomerism. But then I say to them, like, we're at the end of science. We're at the end of science. We've got 10 years left of the science project. And then we've got, at the most, 20 years. And they go like, what? Like, no, science goes on to the stars. And you think, no, it doesn't. It's got to be funded. We're at the end. We're at CERN. All the information we're going to collect, when the James Webb telescope goes up next year, that will be our last look at the universe. And if we haven't figured out, I mean, the standard model of cosmology, the standard model of the atom, they're all at 6s and 7s. It's a complete mess. They're just thousands of theories drowning in data, and nobody has any understanding. And we're coming to the end of science. It's like, it's like you've got 10 minutes left to finish this paper. Unless you come to the conclusion, we're not going to do it. And so I'm starting to say to people, what was the science project all about? Now that it's coming to an end and we've completely failed, we haven't got any further than Democritus and Zeno in deciding whether the universe is continuous or discrete, or all these major questions. We still don't even understand biology. So some bastard on a boat can come and make videos about kicking a hole in our primary biological theory. It's basically everything is up for grabs. He's saying so it's a huge service to say to people that concept is like, all the stuff that we've accumulated, say in the Library of Congress and the internet as an archive of information, is where is it going to be? It's going in the next 10 to 20 years. The internet.
But yet everyone thinks that we're still in control. Everyone just clings. You can see it everywhere. It's like, we must control the virus, and it's just endless. They can't stomach it.
But you see, it's easy to predict what comes next, because Biden's narrative is a control narrative.
Yeah.
And so he takes control, and everything he's doing now is take control. So it's easy to see what happens is, watch this idiot at the controls. This is going to be hilarious. So basically, it's going to be, like Keystone Cops, as soon as he basically realizes that they're not okay. At some stage in his presidency, even the dumbest liberal will realize, these guys are not in control. So that's easy point to see. So just think ahead and say, you're going to get there. So start thinking in terms of what that means for XR and the movement. And so, when we get to the point where suddenly everybody loses faith in the state and the government and the leadership, then what's our move? And you can start preparing that now and getting other people prepared. But yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of the psychology of getting people to understand that this ends. There's a change, so that everybody can, basically have a good cry and grieve and come to terms with the fact that this story doesn't end well, and then they're useful. But until now, there isn't anybody in XR, even the leadership, that are useful to anybody. Until they come to, basically, Hallam kind of gets that we're screwed, but he doesn't look like a guy that is internalized it. He's talking about, how we can change the government and the people can do a revolution, and so but then what? You've done the revolution on the Titanic. It doesn't stop the Titanic sinking. So Hallam says in one voice, the Titanic's going to sink. Basically, 2 degrees is built in. Crisis is unavoidable. So he has that little module somewhere in his brain, but then he goes to another module that says it's all positive and we have to rebel, and say, why? You just said this pointless. So yeah, basically, I think that's true. I don't know of anybody really in XR that has all the modules aligned. So a good thing to do in this time, if you make videos or write stuff, and is to get people's thinking aligned, to say that basically we don't get out of this. This is, some stage in the future we're heading for a crisis of maybe extinction proportions, and we don't get out of it. We're not going to avoid it. Then it's not solar panels and Green New Deals and veganism. That's not going to do anything for anybody. So let's advance the discussion on to the fact where we enter the grief stage of realizing we're fucked.
Yeah.
And then say, what do we do? Well, there are various flavors of fucked. Some of them are pretty darn good. So at the moment, we're heading for the worst one possible. And that's because everybody's still sleepwalking.
Yeah.
So the movement should wake up its members and get tough. Get tough with the members and say, get over this consensus thing. Say, look, we don't need dozens of people. There's no point in just filling a big tent full of idiots. So if you don't see where this is going and you don't see that the shit's in it, just fuck off. Just fuck off. Just go sit in a little bubble somewhere, but don't pollute everybody's psychological progress to understanding where we're at.
In grief, there is also denial. And I'd say there's a lot of people in XR that are still in that stage too. And, that Kubler-Ross thing has been written with the sequences, which is complete bullshit. People move in and out of different stages: depression, denial, anger, grief. I mean, it's a mixture of feelings, emotions, and I see, I think a lot of people are stuck in denial, and it will, that can evolve. I think in XR, that's what I see mostly. The modules are not aligned, but that's the same thing. It's the same thing.
But I think the quicker it evolves, the less pain and misery there'll be later on. So
the level of denial is proportional to the level of intoxication and level of brainwashing that our society has been sustaining over the last 30 years. So, the denial phase could last a long time.
Yeah, I mean, look, but the reason to get over it, you can get over it just by example. So you don't have to do a full frontal assault on people in denial. It's basically, if that denial evaporates just as soon as the intelligent people start putting on life jackets, then they think, oh, serious, you putting on a life jacket? You really think the Titanic's going down? And say, sorry, baby, but ship is doomed, man. And then basically, as soon as you see, they're in denial because it's permitted by our society. Everybody's running around saying, the leadership saying, they must have hope, you mustn't give up hope and stuff. And you're saying, like, when serious people, icons of things say, no, we're fucked. Michael Mann, for example, Hansen, but they should shut the fuck up or otherwise start putting on a life jacket very publicly. But just saying, oh, there's hope and stuff, is what the hell are you trying to achieve? You're on the Titanic, you know that the ship is going to sink, and you're walking around the deck saying, have hope, what's that for? Just shut the fuck up or otherwise go and put on a life jacket. Those are the only two reasonable things to do, not walk around trying to give people false hope. So if somebody like Hansen and that came right out and said, we're fucked, 10 years, 20 years, it's not a question of what governments do. It's not a question of activism anymore. Those hurdles are past. Saying like, now we need to start thinking how collapse looks and adapting. So if they became an adaptationist, that would send a loud message through the community, and denial would, Now, think of the other side. Imagine if it's all alarmist and they're all wrong. It doesn't really matter. If the Titanic still floats, it's like, what's the harm? You put on a life jacket too early. But what's really dangerous is walking around a sinking ship that is sinking, and telling people, oh, it's not sinking, we have hope, we can still plug the hole, and saying like, Hansen knows that you can't, and so does Michael Mann. And so it's absolutely unconscionable that those guys as leadership figures are walking around spreading bullshit. So yeah, that's my take on it. And the same applies to Roger and Gail, is they should say, basically call a big assembly of the movement and say, we're fucked. So that we are now beginning adaptation. So if, you are not going to get your social justice, you're not going to basically forget about, equal pay for equal work. Is like, no one's going to have any work. People of color are in serious, serious trouble. It's people in color all over the world, in Africa and particularly, and in America. Anybody that's in at the bottom of the social heap is in serious trouble. So stop all these things about how we must, basically change the economy. The economy effectively is gone. So it's starting to thinking in terms of collapse, and you'll be far better off. Yeah. Anyway,
that's interesting how they. I thought that was interesting how they cut the UK government. They cut the foreign aid budget. They said, no, we're not going to do that, even though they committed it to their pledge, their election pledge, to commit to it. Last week they ditched it. The Chancellor ditched the foreign aid budget.
I don't know that. I don't know that. But you see, that's more indication that they're circling the wagons, right? They're in bunker mode. Yeah.
But I was thinking, there was a scientist who said we're fucked. That was Stephen Emmett. That was a few years ago. Do you remember him? The 10 billion film. Yeah. He came out and said it. And that's that guy runs that's at Microsoft, or some research off of Microsoft, isn't it? Some spin-off in life, and basically figuring out some lab run, and I think they have funding from Microsoft, figuring out the damage that humans are having to the planet. And he came to that conclusion.
But the thing is, though, there are lots of people. I have these conversations all the time with people, and then basically people deny it all. They're basically 2 glasses of wine away from admitting we're fucked.
Yeah.
So, what I'm saying is, like, everybody knows it. They should come out and say it. They think they're doing favors by telling people, no, we'll beat this cancer. And it's like, no, you're better off telling the patients the truth. I mean, just think of where we're at now. We've got the internet. We've nobody's starving. There's still plenty of food to go around. There's still plenty of oil and energy. And basically, there's a lot we could do if we just admitted where we're headed. If where we're actually going to be is when we've got multi-bread basket failures for 3 years in a row, and there's famine, and then everybody will realize we are really fucked, aren't we? And then there's going to be panic, and nobody's going to have any money, and nobody will have any options, and that's when they'll be really, really scared. So it's like, get there soon, get there early, and there's still options. So they're not options to save the ship. That's what we have to get off that dialogue. But they're options for determining how our sinking goes. And so our sinking is turning into a nightmare.
That's the thing that scares me most, because obviously I've seen your video series, and with the managed extinction nightmare, and I saw that last year. And then with everything that's happened this year, I'm the same as you guys. When the first lockdown happened, I was like, hey, this is finally, we got some shit happening. And then it's kind of slowly turned into this creeping, like, giving me the chills that everything they're doing is like, it's going that way. You can see it. It's there. It's coming. Just everything, the way that the policies, and and then the money and the vaccine, and in terms of when I say money, I mean the money that will be handed out, UBI, and infringements on civil liberties, and you can just see how it's all lining up. It is scary.
So this is early days.
It is.
In terms of, like, you see, I think of it in terms of, let's say, World War II. This was the end of the phony war in 1939. Now the Battle of Britain starts in 1940. So it's also a very false narrative when people say, well, how long do you think we've got? And you say that, well, in terms of clock time, not long. In terms of Kairos time and lifetime, we've got a lifetime. You see, in Britain in 1940, there's not 5 years from 1940 to 1945. There are 5 lifetimes.
Mm.
And that's what people must start to think in terms of. If you start now, there's lifetimes to go. Basically, life is going to be intense. You can say that.
Yeah, Jim Lovelock said that. James Lovelock said that, when he was a young scientist in the war, and he said it was great. It was brilliant,
Yeah.
Had a brilliant time. He had to, it was like, you need to invent some fireproofing on this, it needs to be done yesterday, like get to it. Like, he had to invent stuff. But I mean, he was young, and the point about you say about, war claps, it can be, intense, but great times, lots to be done. So time will probably slow down in those times, I suppose.
But in denial, people are they're not through the looking glass, and on the wrong side of the looking glass, they say, well, if you think there's no hope, why don't you just fucking shoot yourself? And you say, like, how do you get to that from there's no hope, shoot yourself? It's like, hey, the final act is the best part of the play. I'm not dying out for anybody. It's funny how people in denial are just like snap to like, okay, then what do you mean this play doesn't go on forever? Well, no, thank God it doesn't. The curtain's going to fall. We're in that's the end of the second act, and now we're going to be in the third act. And they say, what? The curtain's going to fall? Well, fuck it. Just burn the house down. Just burn the fucking theater. I don't want to know anymore. I'm leaving. It's like, don't you want to see the third act? This is the greatest story ever told. It's like, nah, I'm fucking off. It's like, if it doesn't carry on forever, I don't want to see it. It's like, what kind of logic is that? It's perverse. But this is the kind of ruminations that you can do, luckily, in this time. At least 6 people on the internet having these conversations.
Excuse me for a moment.
Yeah, well, I feel like I said my piece. It was like...
And I think it all just boils down to the Immortality Project, like just looking at that analogy, like the difference between like just watching a movie. We know a movie ends, but it's like, it's our human lives. It's the human species. It's like we want it to, we want it to carry on forever and ever, I think, right? That's kind of the idea for those kind of people. Think that way.
Mom, tell me another story. Mom, tell me another story.
Sure.
Yeah. I've just seen a fox passing first time at the sunset. He's just gone over the wall. Sorry, I was just like a fox.
So
yeah,
twilight. Yeah.
He's coming back. It's the winter. This has nothing to do with collapse.
Well, it does, because all these kind of things you notice and appreciate. But I think science is a lot more interesting, and our whole story is a lot more interesting if you talk about it in terms of it ending. So it's if it's kind of a boring thing to say, well, science will go on infinitely and we'll make more discoveries and we'll have a technological. And if you say, well, no, this is the final. We've got to wrap this up now. What is science for and stuff? It's a much better story, in my view.
Yeah, and another thing is, like, we like stories because they begin and because they end. If there's no beginning and no ending, there's no story.
Yes, true, very true.
Yeah, can you imagine a Shakespeare play that never ends? It would be Wagnerian opera. and look what happened to them. Look what happened to them.
No. That's
the difference between the English and the Germans. The English know how to round off a story. The Germans don't understand a story arc. That's the problem with them.
I think we should end this on the flight of the Valkyrie.
Yeah, but from Apocalypse Now.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good note to end on right there. Apocalypse Now.
I actually watched the movie not long ago again, and I've seen it several times. It's just a beautiful movie.
Yeah, it's a great
Brilliant,
film.
isn't it? It's just brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, we were going to talk about art and stuff. That was so we did get to art. Just sneaked it in the
Next week. Next week.
Next week. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing you riff on that, because I don't have too much like intellectual knowledge and of symbolism and art. I just sort of do it every day, and that's it.
Yeah, but it's an important tool for reflection. That's a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And maybe we could talk about music too.
Yeah, well, Gary's not on, but Gary knows. I don't know anything about music, but Gary knows a lot about music.
Mm.
So yeah, Gary needs a rest. This is like,
Oh yeah, music's pretty fun too. I sort of dabble in like a lot of it. I do art, music, and writing. Like
Yeah.
drawing, drawing, music, and writing. Yeah.
Mm.
yeah. So yeah, I like the theory of music, but I'm not too clued on music.
Okay.
Well, that's great.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Mike.
Good chat.
Bye. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. All
Take
of
care.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye.